Well, thank you all so much for being here. We're going to go ahead and get started. We want to be respectful of y'all's time. I'm so glad you're here. And if I have not had the chance to meet you yet, there's a few people I have not met yet here today. My name is Jonathan Ingram, and it's my honor to be the executive director of Faith Co-op. Faith Co-op is a faith-based nonprofit here in Chattanooga, and our mission is to awaken Christians to how their faith brings daily purpose. And a big part of your daily life and the daily purpose that God's called you to is the thing that you're doing 40 to 60 hours a week of your life, your job. And so at Faith Co-op, we do a lot of different initiatives and programs and events around town to encourage Christians to have an imagination for what they're doing on a daily basis, how it can be something as worship to God, and that's something that God cares a lot about. And so today you're at one of our initiatives, our Lunch and Learn series. We put on 6 of these events a year, and we theme them out over the course of the year. Today, the topic is Who is My Neighbor in Human Resources? We oftentimes talk about a scripture verse that many of you are familiar with, is how the Bible talks about what Christians are called to, the 2 greatest commandments, to love God and to love your neighbor as yourself. And we did a Lunch and Learn series last year on reimagining work. And every single Lunch and Learn we had, speakers spoke about this idea of loving neighbor was something that drove them in the work that they did. And so this year what we're doing is we're diving a little bit deeper into that idea. What does it mean in light of the work that you're doing to love? What does love look like in a business context, in a work context? Who are the stakeholders I'm called to care for and love? And so it's been really fun. This is our 4th of a 6-part series on loving your neighbor in light of an industry. And so really excited today to be talking about human resources. I know you just woke up today going, I cannot wait to talk about human resources. But it is a fascinating thing that speaks a lot to what it means for us to honor God in a corporate way, in a corporate setting. Angela Sharps and Karis, you guys can come on up. I'm really thankful to have them here. These are professionals in this field that have thought deeply about this. They are not just strong believers, which they are, but they're also excellent at their craft. And as I've got to talk to them, it's been so fun to hear how their faith is informing the really cool things that they're getting to do and the work they have. So can we welcome them to talk our time today? Thank you guys so much for doing this. The first question, I just love for you guys to do a more formal introduction of who you are. Let people know who you are, where you work. How did you get into the field of human resources, and what's exciting about it for you?
Okay, I'm Angela Sharps, and I work at Bridges Consumer Healthcare, at least for the last 4 weeks. Before that, I was with McKee Foods, which is the maker of Little Debbie products. So I went from a very large company to a very small company where I'm the only HR person at the moment. So that's been a fun transition. And my husband, Andrew, is here just supporting me today. And I have 2 children, Audrey and Elliot.
Great. Hi, my name's Karis Tucker. I'm the network HR manager at Kenco. I lead HR for our fleet services division, which is material handling. So about 75% of our employees are forklift mechanics. So it's taught me a lot. I started my career at Squid. Actually, this man back here, Lane, hired me onto the finance team originally, and I worked on his team in sales ops for about 2 months before a role in HR opened up at Squid. Ended up being the recruiter there. So yeah.
That's awesome. What do you guys love about working in HR? What kind of drew you to that field? And what are some things about that profession that maybe people don't think about that plays into the roles that you guys get to do?
Yeah, I really enjoy the coaching aspect of my job. I think that's the really fun part. When you see the light bulb go on somebody's eyes when they realized that they solved their own problem and that you got to help them get there, that they are capable of doing more than they thought of, that's really exciting for me. Something that people probably don't know about HR is that HR actually doesn't fire people. I think HR gets blamed for a lot, but we're not the ones firing people. We are ultimately consultants, And we're doing investigations. We're looking at the company policy. We're looking at the applicable laws, and then we make a recommendation to leadership. And whatever that might look like at your company, they are ultimately the ones making that decision, and not HR. So HR doesn't fire people.
Yeah, same. I used to be really afraid of the HR folks. You see them walking down the hallway, and you're like, oh. Got a meeting over here. But what I've found since being in HR is we're really here to support and help them be their best, their best coming to work every day. And that's really rewarding to be able to solve their problems. And hey, how can I help you get the help that you need in order to show up to work and be the best employee that you can be?
That's good. Everyone in here probably has a story or an opinion of when they hear HR and their company, kind of you're talking about either they're running or they've had a good experience. But we're all coming not empty slates on that topic. From you guys' perspective, what does a healthy HR department look like if it's functioning the way it's supposed to in a company?
I guess some words that come to mind are proactive and strategic and supportive and helpful, and you said consultants. We're there to help you all and out of the people there, and support and help, which I don't think are the first words that come to people's minds when they think of HR. But that's sad. It really should be.
Yeah, kind of going off of that, when I'm looking for a new role, something that I look for personally is, does HR have a seat at the table with leadership? Because if that is not happening, you can't have a healthy HR department. Long gone are the days in which HR is basically the personnel department that keeps employee files. That is not the new world of HR. HR is a strategic business partner. I think all the business decisions ultimately have people decisions. They've got a people element to that. And so therefore, HR needs to be at the table having a voice into that conversation. And that aspect needs to be discussed and looked at. So that's, for me, what I look for in a healthy HR department is, do they have the ear of leadership, and does leadership listen to them? Because if not, you're not really going to be able to do any good.
Just kind of follow up on both of your answers. What does it look like to kind of navigate that transition between the employees of a company and the leadership and the decisions that are being made? How do you all try to manage that in the ways that you lead? And now a team of one, there's another way to think about that. But from a larger company standpoint, what does that look like for you personally to try to do that navigating and advocating?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we get to do, or at least for me, being a little bit of a larger organization, I get to be kind of the voice of employees to leadership at times. They'll often ask me, okay, what are you hearing in the field? So I have the opportunity. I have about 200 employees in the U.S., and they're at 80 locations. And so I spend a lot of my time going to their locations and talking to them. They're also calling me at their worst times. So whether like an employee's wife died this morning, their house burnt down. I've had employees call me when they're homeless, things like that. But at the same time, they'll call me when they're upset at their manager or they don't like this new policy. I definitely hear from them. So I get to kind of be a voice and translate that to leadership of, hey, this isn't going over well. This is what employees are dealing with on the field. And come up with ideas to be able to help and serve them.
Yeah, I agree. Something happened at the new company that I'm at in the last 3 weeks, and I had a line of employees outside my door. Like, that's never a good thing when that happens. However, it was great for me because people knew I would talk to them. They knew I would listen. They knew I would try to find solutions and then advocate, like you said, to management on their behalf, because I'm here for the people, right? And I'm here to support and help them. So that's what we're here to do. We're not here to do the hiring and the firing. We do some of that, but in the end, we're a strategic help to the companies that we're with.
And a lot of what you do are these individual connection points with employees, but part of that is you learning kind of what the needs are of a bigger, more than just one person. Part of, so as I was thinking about that, as you guys are making policies for organizations, sometimes not everyone's going to be as excited about a policy that you feel like is in the common good for the sake of the company. So how do you navigate caring for the individuals that are the employees in your company, but also the company culture that you're called to care for broadly, even if maybe it doesn't translate into positive things for everyone at the same level?
Understanding what employees want and need, like what problem are we actually trying to solve with these solutions that we're talking about. And so time it gets to management and we have solutions on the table, it's because we've spent a lot of time researching and talking with people and understanding needs, also understanding what the company culture is before we go do stuff. So that, and things don't always hit people well. There's a group that always is going to be upset about something that you've done. Even if you think it's a great thing and everybody should be happy, there's a small group that's always going to be like, nope. So just having the reasons and the why and we did this because the culture is this and we think this is going to be the impact of it, that's always really important to have.
So I'm in a little bit different of a situation because I'm a part of a very large company. We have about 7,000 employees. So I don't really get to make the big policies. And so I think what I try to do is listen, let the employee feel heard, understand their concerns, and see if there's something we can do to help them, whatever the situation is. But when I read your question, what I really thought about is, so when I think about caring for individuals at the same time as caring for the larger company, a lot of times if we're caring for the individual, you can't swing either way. You can't let the pendulum swing either way, because if you take too much concern for an individual, then that can hurt everybody else at the same time. So I think about situations, and this has come up many times in my career, in which an individual, particularly, it's usually somebody in leadership that has a manager of sorts that has violated some policy, and not holding them accountable because they've been with us for so long and they've done so many great things for the company, is both hurting them and the company as a whole, because it shows the rest of the company and individuals that, you can get away with this, that policy doesn't really matter. But at the same time, accountability is actually a gift. Holding people accountable is actually a gift to them, to help them see what they've done.
Yeah, I think too about how often when you show grace to someone who's on a team where they're not doing what they're supposed to, what that communicates to the other people on that team, and how it can actually be loving to do that, right? That accountability piece.
And it really hurts your culture.
Yeah.
So if you allow, this is an extreme, but if you allow sexual harassment to happen, that's gonna destroy your culture. If you let that slip and give a slap on the hand, there goes your culture is gone.
That's really good. So both of you in your roles, in HR, you're advocating for people, you're advocating for the company, but you also get to roll out initiatives and programs to care for the employees that are in your company that, that you get, there's some creativity that can come in that. I didn't know if in your careers, whether at the current job you have or somewhere else, if there's programs that you're really proud of that you had a chance to be a part of and rolling out for employees in your company.
Yeah, I actually just wrapped one up last week. So I've had the pleasure the last 5 months. I created a leadership development program called Emerging Leaders that really takes hourly employees and gets them ready to be leaders and managers within the organization. So I took a group of 9 mechanics from across the country through a 5-month grueling program where I had them doing things that they had never heard of or thought of before. I reminded them every step of the way that when you're uncomfortable, that's when growth happens. So we read leadership books. They went through communication training, emotional intelligence, They met with their managers, they did group projects, they got to learn about accounting and profit and loss statements. And then we wrapped up where they did a quarterly business review presentation last week. And it was just the best thing to see their growth, not only in them personally in their professional lives, but also hearing about how it affected their home lives. One guy told me about how his relationships at home with his wife and his kids had gotten better because of the communication training. And I was like, well, I'm done. I can retire now. And so, being able to do things that impact people in those ways, and that's going to be with them. They have those lessons for the rest of their lives, and that's what really gets me jazzed.
Yeah, so at McKee, we have several thousand manufacturing employees, and we have an attendance policy that is fairly stringent. As some of y'all do in the manufacturing kind of sector, the line starts at a certain time, the trucks start at a certain time, and you have to have people there to be able to do that. But, the office people that have now lived through COVID, we have flexibility, we can work from home, a kid's sick, we can stay home and just, get on the computer and still do work. So we have all this flexibility now, and our manufacturing employees still don't. And I think, for a period of time, we acted like they didn't have home lives, they didn't have personal lives that they were bringing into work too. And so I'm no longer with McKee, but we're working on a project to be more lenient, to recognize, hey, we can have care and compassion for you because your kid was sick and has been sick for an entire week now. And we still need the lines to run because we got to get little Debbie cakes out the window, but we also can understand that you have a personal life and have compassion for that, be able to get people to cover lines and be able to not make that as much of a punitive process as it used to be. So just giving people who have to show up every day on time, on the dot, a little bit of grace, a little bit of compassion goes a long way for the culture of the organization as well. We're about helping and supporting people, not getting everything out that we possibly can.
Just to kind of follow up, because I love how you both talked about that, is really it's like seeing the employees as a whole person, and that they're not just someone that's clocking in with nothing else, that there's a story behind why they're there and what's going on in their life. How do you have eyes, I know, but your lives get busy too, and you have to take care of the company. How do you all practice trying to see your employees in that type of way? What does that look like for you to lean into that?
I think it's really about meeting face to face with employees, and that's hard to do sometimes when you're in the office and that's where you live, but the majority of your people are out on the floor, they're driving trucks, or they're doing that type of thing. So taking the time to meet people where they're at and have conversations with them, and like, hey, how is work going? How is the flexibility? How is your home life? And how is it, meshing with your work life? That's hard to do. It's not been something I've been great at personally, because you get stuck in the office and that becomes your space. But I think it's important to get out and know people.
I would say for me, I try to defer judgment until we have all the facts. So a typical day for me is getting a call from a manager saying that so-and-so did blah, blah, blah. And my first question to them is, so did you talk to him? Usually the answer is no. And so then I say, all right, you need to go find out what happened. Go talk to them. Ask them tell me about what happened, with XYZ. And typically, you're going to get a lot more of the backstory. So I want to make sure that we're getting the full context. Was there somebody else there? Let's get the whole story instead of jumping to conclusions. Let's find out why they did that, what happened, what else was going on at that time, before we make a snap judgment.
Yeah, questions can be a great dignifying thing, and making time, like slowing down to make time. Both of those are like really good practices. We learned today that HR does not fire. So my next question, I'm going to change how I say it a little bit. In the role that you all have played in the process of the hiring and firing, I hope you all have started hearing some language, without asking any faith questions, how their faith is informing what they do. But when we come into this part of the job that can feel icky, when it feels not loving, even if your role isn't to be the direct person to fire, how does your view of the person, of who God is, the gospel, inform how you can walk into situations that require someone being terminated or a layoff that needs to happen, and how do you navigate that personally, and what's that look like for the company you're part of?
Well, people ask me that all the time. How do you fire people all the time? Like, how do you do that? Well, I remind them, A, I don't fire them, and B, with when it's a termination for cause, meaning somebody broke a policy or a law, they did something, they fired themselves. For a good, healthy company, that there are expectations and policies written out, and they should always know what that expectation is and what they did. So it's not us doing it. That we've given them chances, we've warned them, so they're really firing themselves. The other thing is, I really, what I hold on to is that nothing's a surprise to God. And that He is going to take care of His children, but that doesn't always look the way that we want it to look. I think about the Israelites and what they had to go through to get to the Promised Land. So they went through the plagues. They were chased out by chariots, and then they came to a sea. But God made a way through. And then they went through 40 years in the wilderness, and that's not what they had in their heads of what the Promised Land, what it would be like to get to the Promised Land. And I think that's something that we have to remember, that God will make a way, but it might not look like the way that we want to.
Yeah, I think when it comes to firing people, I think you often focus on the person that's done something that gets them fired. And in the kind of family-owned companies that I've been with for the past 10 years, a lot of times we take the stance of grace and compassion for that individual who's done that thing, and sometimes forget about the coworkers around them that they are also influencing, that are having to pick up the work, that are having to work at night to maybe compensate for this other person. And so one of the things I remember is, what impact is this individual having on everybody else around them, on the culture of the company? Because as you talked about earlier, if you let things slide, the culture slides with it. People start going, oh, well, if they can do that, then I can, fill in the blank. So it really is important to take things on head on, and it's difficult, it's not an easy, but it's necessary for the culture that the people want to be there. And from a biblical standpoint, God is a God of care and compassion and love, but God equally is a God of judgment. And so there's a time for compassion and grace, and I think you can fire somebody with compassion and grace while also, using that judgment component while you're doing it.
Yeah, as you were both talking, I was thinking about that. What does it mean to see someone as an image bearer of God, see the dignity of who they are, when you have to have that type of hard conversation that highlights maybe where they weren't measuring up to what was needed in that role that they had? What are the internal things you have to do to get ready for that type of conversation, to be able to do it in that type of way that you just described?
Yeah, I love that. That was actually something I was thinking about too, which is, even the people who mess up, and you're frustrated, you're upset that somebody would do something, you're maybe talking to managers who are really, let's get them out of here, whatever that comes with that. But we're all image bearers of God, and we all mess up and do stupid things at some point. Hopefully not stupid enough to get fired, ultimately. But I still think we can really treat people with care and compassion and having those conversations with them. One of the great things that McKee does is we will have conversations with the employee of like, hey, this is what we've heard. Is this what happened? We allow them to advocate for themselves and tell us what happened. So it's not just okay, you're out. It's let's have this conversation about what happened. But then we're going to make the decision, but we're going to tell you, hey, thanks for the time here. It didn't work out. But it's not going to be done in anger or frustration. It's going to be really a fact-finding conversation.
For me, I try to keep in check to not let that one thing define that person. Because we've all made mistakes. We've all sinned and fallen short of God's glory. And remember that I too have made mistakes. And that could just as easily have been me, if not for the grace of God. Whatever it might have been. And keeping that and remembering that they're not defined by that one act or thing or several things that they did. And then I think providing them support as well of, okay, here's how you, depending on the situation, here's how you get COBRA, how you continue this is what's going to happen to your benefits. This is when your last check is going to be. This is how you file for unemployment. Those types of pieces of information in the moment when it's swirling. Those are big moments that people are usually often overwhelmed. So providing those pieces of information, I think, are helpful.
That's good. I think even if you're not the one being fired, a thing that I always have to be reminded of, and thankful for leaders that have pointed me to this, is that we don't work to earn dignity, that we have our dignity as image bearers. It's a gift that we have, that we work out of. Whether you end up getting fired or not, that doesn't change who you are. And man, the way you just described, both of you described that, is what it looks like to model that for someone, that, hey, your dignity is not wrapped up in the performance here. You are already loved and cared for, right? We've been talking around the idea of faith and how that's informing what you're doing. And I would just love if there are things that drive you in your work, either a theological idea or specific Bible verses that inform you as you go about your job in human resources and try to do this act of loving folks in this type of context.
Well, you stole my thunder. And so, I really operate from all people are made with dignity. We're all made in the image of God and therefore made with dignity. And so I view myself, I view the employees and the managers as my customers. I'm going to serve. How can I serve you today? I'm here to support you and serve you. And treating the lowest paid employee the same way you would the CEO. And I think that goes a long way with respecting people. I also lean on the words of Jesus from Mark 12, where he talks about the second greatest commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. And so in those moments when you're having to terminate somebody, when you're having to do a layoff, I think about how would I want to be treated in that moment? How can I treat this person with dignity like I would want to be?
Let's see, wrote mine down because I knew I would forget the passage. This has actually been my life verse since college, so I should know it by now, but it's 2 Timothy 1:7, for God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And I've loved that because I think so many times we can operate out of fear, especially in HR. There's a fear of who's going to walk out next, who's going to not walk out next, who's going to bring risk to the company, what's going to happen with, there's all kinds of things that we can fear when we go to work. And I need this verse because I think, God has not given us a spirit of fear. I need to approach this situation and this thing with power and love and of a sound mind, and that's the legacy. That's what God has given me to do. I think when we start finding ourselves operating out of fear, it's usually we're not making very good decisions at that point, and not taking in all the facts like we should be. So just returning to a sound mind and power, usually with prayer to God to help in whatever situation it is, and with a good grounding in the Word of God.
a big idea that drives Faith Co-op and why we think our work is something that matters to God in big ways is that God is not just coming to zap my soul up to heaven one day, but that he's coming to redeem all things back to himself, including our work. And we want to help people imagine, and I hope as you're sitting here, you're thinking about your own context and the work that you're called to do, whether it's human resources or something else, but we get to imagine what it might look like for renewal to show up in our places. And the last question I had for y'all was just, what's your hope for your organizations? What's your hope for the employees? If you are doing your job faithfully, how does that show up for your employees? And then how does the gospel drive that hope that you have for them and for the organization?
Yeah, so 4 weeks in at the new job, and the only HR person there, my goal and my prayer for them has been that they are able to show up to work happy to be there, excited to be there every single day. They're walking into people that they love working with. It's a haven for them, and I've had employees tell me that before who maybe have difficult home lives and they're really struggling with stuff, and work is their haven. And I really just want that to be a haven for people where they're able to use their skills and their talents to really do some amazing things for their coworkers and people around them, and just be fulfilled in what they're doing and doing it well every day.
I think for me, when I leave Kenco one day, I will hope that I've laid a foundation of trust and respect, and a way for people to grow and develop. That not only with the Emerging Leaders Program, but there are career paths for people. But also that the employees know that they're going to be treated fairly, and that culture with managers has been set and laid, where they are going to defer judgment. They're going to lead with grace and kindness.
You know, God's first commandment to Adam and Eve was to rule and to serve in the garden, right? Abad and Shamar, these beautiful Hebrew words. And I think about stewardship when I think about those words, and when I think about what you all just described, the role of HR and companies is you're stewarding a culture and caring for these employees, which there's some leading involved, but a ton of that leading comes from service, which I heard both of you say. Thank you so much for sharing from your heart. Can we thank them for being here with us? We have a few minutes. We wanted to leave some time. If there are any questions in the audience that you want to ask. Troy, you have a question?
Thank you guys for your time. My question is kind of twofold. You guys hire returning talent, one, and if so, do you have any success stories? If not, is that a conversation within your company?
Could you clarify what you mean by return talent? Like somebody?
Come home from prison.
Oh, coming home from prison.
Reentry population.
Re-entry.
Second chance.
So I can't think of any success stories off the top of my head. I'm pretty confident that we've had a lot in the industry that I'm in. I do look at their backgrounds, and we do allow people second chances. We have certain parameters that we have to follow because of our customers that they require from our contracts, because of the type of businesses that they're in. So I'm in a weird business in that the folks that I support, they are actually a vendor on site at a customer's location, so they don't show up to a Kenco site. But I do know that we do have some folks that have been through things, and one of the things that I do is I don't share that with anybody else, because they don't need to know that. They just need to know whether they passed or not, and the past is in the past, and people definitely can change. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I don't have much experience with that, and I actually don't know if we do that at McKee or not. I hope we do, though.
Troy's the one to talk to about that for sure, though. Anyone else? Any other questions? Yeah, Dave.
So, without getting political, because I realize what season we're in.
And what day it is today?
Are there ways that you see like worldliness sneaking into your profession that might surprise us? Like, there's certain like things that are sort of popularly talked about, but in the world of HR, like, are there things where you're like, oh, I recognize that as a very seditious pressure that's on me now that I need to resist and be salty, in a way that might surprise us?
Yeah, I think it's becoming a culture of anything goes. And even with my transition from a family-owned, Christian company to a private equity-backed firm with leaders from New York, and it's already a different kind of world. And so I think we're gonna see more of that, is just whatever kind of goes and whatever feels right sneaking in versus what does the Bible say, because there is no foundation for a lot of people. So yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of hard conversations for us, especially in HR coming up, of, can this person use this restroom, which I know probably everybody's dealing with now, and will we allow certain medications to be on the formulary? So there's a lot coming our way. So we need discernment and support and help, from each other as Christians as we walk through this.
I think for me, the thing that I see the most is greed. That's the sneakiest one, I think, in the business world, is to want, as business leaders, to want to squeeze more and more out of employees. Because, each year, your investors want more and more return. And they're asking you to do more and more. And I think you've got to weigh growth with also stewarding your people at the same time. Something that I do is if a leader goes on PTO and they're the worst at it, even taking their PTO, is they still continue to work and reply to emails. And I reply back, you are on PTO, turn your phone off. Because they're not setting a good example for other people. And part of it is their own, there's a lot at work there. There's your own identity that you're looking to work to be your identity instead of Christ. But also, the pressure from stakeholders and others to make more money and to squeeze more out of your employees.
That's good. TW.
Thank y'all for both sharing. It's helpful. You talked about that strategic partner piece and working with your leadership. Are there ways that you've been able to partner with the rest of the coworkers, whether it be if you're in manufacturing, a plant environment, or an office environment, where they see you as a trusted partner versus just their HR, they're the principal, they're the ones that hire and fire. Any tips on how to partner with the whole team, not just leadership, how to sustain that partnership?
Yeah, I think that starts with putting in the work of building a relationship. You got to earn the right to be heard. You've got to earn those chips and then spend them wisely. And so that takes a long time. It's the long road versus the short road. That's something that I really focus on. So, in my situation, I'm in a shared services model, and you may or may not know what that means. Basically, I've got a corporate team that does a lot of really awesome things for me, like benefits and payroll, and I've got an employment attorney, and compliance and security and safety. I've got all these corporate folks that support me while I'm on the field and kind of I'm the face of HR to our team. But they don't work for me. And so the better relationship that I can build with them, the better we're going to work together. And the better that they're going to hear me when I've got something hard to say, and that we can come up with ideas to solve problems. For our group and for the group as a whole, if I put in the work of building a relationship, taking the time to talk to them when I see them. So I make it a point, I don't have to go into our corporate office. But when I go into our corporate office, I make a point to ask them how their dog is, or how their last vacation was, or whatever it might be, to sit down and have a conversation with them.
Yeah, I will underscore relationships as well. So in the new company, I met with the leadership level of, hey, what's working for you, what's not, what can I support you with? But now I'm working my way down, and I'm going to meet with there's only 45 people, but I'm going to meet with everybody in the organization and just say, what's working for you, what's not, how can I support you? And what I've heard already is parking. Parking's a big deal here downtown, to find, a good place where you feel safe and it's cheap enough and that type of thing. So, all right, I'm going to go figure parking out. And they said, if you do that, Angela, that'll make our day. So sometimes it's the small things to support people. And I'm hoping that, if I can do the small things, it opens the discussion for some of the bigger things around, okay, how are you doing? What can I do from a leadership development standpoint? How can I help you show up to work and do a great job for it? But it starts with relationships.
Yeah, there's like a difference between a transactional relationship and a relationship where someone feels seen. And I love that example. That's really good.
You guys have said some really great stuff. I got like a page of notes. I've been just jumbling out some thoughts, and I love the idea that when you were talking about accountability, right? You brought this up. What came to my head was, right, as people belonging to this faith, we are invited to, and actually compelled to speak truth to power, right? There's an element of what you were talking about, in regardless of station, right? And yet at the same time, we hold this tension. Because we are to be for people and steward the square inch where we're at, right? And I'm curious if you've got any practical networks or things that you have found helpful as you walk that out day to day. Networks internally across the company, like, similar to the business relationships, the strategic relationships. It's just as easily for us to lose our way in that. So I just would love to hear from your perspective.
Yeah, I would love to hear as well. And part of it is because, when you're in a company like McKee that's very faith-based, you've got a ton of people surrounding you that you can collaborate with and go, hey, I'm dealing with this thing. What would you do? As a person of HR person, the only one in the company, all of a sudden I'm going, okay, we need a network. Like, this is hard. So I'm right with you.
I'm really thankful to have had some great coworkers in the past, and so I've got some folks that I can call. So I had my manager for the first couple of years at Kenco was fantastic, and we still talk probably once a month. So she's somebody I still call, and I'm like, hey, this is what's, because she knows all the characters. I'll call her and be like, hey, so this is what's going on. This is what I'm thinking. Am I off base here? Still to this day, if I need somebody else to talk it through. And then I've got some other friends that are in this space that I can call and be like, hey, can I tell you about this situation? Can I talk it through? They'll do the same thing with me of like, this is what I'm dealing with. This is what I'm thinking. What, am I off base here? And I think that's important to have people in your life that feel comfortable enough to call you out and tell you when you're wrong. I think that's valuable in every area of life, to have those folks that are speaking into your life.
Well, I just think that's an extension of the body of Christ. We oftentimes just think it's our church community that's the body of Christ, but it's, the people that are around us in our orbit that can ask us really great questions. And I hope our pastors get to a place where they're doing a better job of that and checking in on that. But I think that's really good. Yeah, one more question. Yeah. That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that. think about, just made me think about in Hebrews, it talks about that Jesus experienced everything we experience as a human, and that's part of like our redemption story. And as we embody what it means to follow Christ, when we do that in small ways of shadowing someone or seeing what their work's like and empathizing with them, it's actually pointing to something gospel-centered, I think. That's really cool. Great questions. Thank you all. Thank you all so much. Can we give them a round of applause one more time? I want to be respectful to end on time, and so I know many of you have to go back to work for this afternoon. Thank you for engaging this. On your table, there's, if you want to stay involved with Faith Co-op, there's a QR code for ways that you can be involved, whether that's signing up for our newsletter. They're in the little picture frames. Sign up for our newsletter. If you want to help support the work that we do, if you want to know about other things that we have coming up, we want you to stay involved. Our goal with Faith Co-op is to be a community of believers around town that are encouraging one another and helping us remember that God cares about what we're up to and having a vision for what that looks like in our 9 to 5, our daily lives. So thank you for taking the time to be a part of this, and blessings as you go back to your work and all the different things that God's called you to do. Thanks so much.